I would like to invite Mr. Owaisi to the stage. And I would like to request Mrs. Kavita to present a token of appreciation, the Gandhian Charkha, to Shri Asaduddin Owaisi. Since we are talking about policy making, and since we are talking about gaining diverse perspectives on things, we have with us a Member of Parliament from the United Kingdom, Ms. Seema Malhotra, who's an MP from London. I would request Ms. Seema Malhotra to kindly grace the stage, please. Let's have a huge round of applause for Ms. Seema Malhotra. I'd like to request Mrs. Kavita to present a token of appreciation, the Gandhian Charkha, and a shawl to Ms. Seema Malhotra. This will be a 60-minute panel, and we will take 10 minutes of question and answers towards the end. I hope he is in the house. Over to Mr. Shekhar Gupta.
Well, thank you very much. If you would all please take your seats. We know that Anna Hazare gave us a very rousing speech, but I need to call him back to order all of you to sit down because unlikely you will listen to me. So please do take your seats so we can get started. It's an interesting panel, a very diverse panel, and a very youthful panel. See, it's only in India, when I was being introduced, somebody said veteran editor. It's only in India that you call somebody veteran and invite him to speak on youth policy, which is really the tragedy of our country. In our country, which is so young, most of the power and leadership goes to much older people. In fact, most of our politicians tend to be very old. I do remember that Madhav Sindhia, when he was 53 years old, his party would tell him, "Bhai, we can't give you more responsibility, you are still young." So he would say, "Look, I'm 53 years old, I'm a grandfather twice over, what else do I have to do?" So I used to tell him that in India, unless you're about 75 and you've had 2 bypasses, nobody takes you seriously. They don't think you have wisdom. And that works in our policy as well. Because what happens is when older people control policy, older people look at youth with a little bit of resentment, most of them, because they all miss the fact that they are no longer that young. Second, generations change very fast now. In old days, we used to say that every 25 years there is a generation gap. But now with so much internet, so much social media, availability of so much knowledge, short attention spans, I would say there is a generation gap every 7 years. So you find somebody 20 years younger than you, there is a 3 generation gaps between them. Because I have children who are in their 30s now. They are both married, also to people in their 30s. If they come to my newsroom now, they meet people, they say, "Arey Baba, looks like there is a big generation gap between your staff and ours." So now generations are changing very fast. So it's very difficult for older leaders now to understand what do the young want. And frankly, the reason our youth have not quite, many of them have done very well. I bet all of you here have done very well. But lots of others haven't done so well. They are carrying completely wasted engineering and management degrees, which can get them no jobs. That's why for 63,000 jobs in the railways, we get 2 crore applications. And many of them are PhDs, masters, engineers, like that. So this happens because the older people try to imagine the life and needs of the young and try to address those. Now, we are talking in the Gandhian, uh, within Gandhian parameters today. Now, Gandhi's idea of India, where India lived, what India's young people should be doing, idealism, was very different and it was defined by his times. In fact, many of those ideas were impractical even for his own closest followers, including Nehru. Nehru and Ambedkar both had arguments with Gandhi. In fact, the famous line of when Gandhi said that India lives in its villages, and Ambedkar asked him, but must it continue to do so forever? Because Ambedkar thought an Indian village was a very unequal place where your identity never left you. So everybody knew whether you were a Rajput or a Brahmin or a Dalit or a whatever caste, what happened in your family history, so and so ran away with so and so committed that crime, and etc. etc. So that's why you find so many of India's young people are leaving villages and coming to the cities, because besides everything else, they also need the anonymity of the city. So Indian leaders have failed India's youth in many areas, the first of which is urbanization. Urbanization is essential for fulfilling aspiration of the youth. We have built a fake politics in our country in the name of Gandhi, whereby urbanization has been made to look like a bad thing, that cities are bad, villages are virtuous. Both are good, both should be better, but a growing economy for its young people must build cities, because only then will you provide jobs and a better quality of life. Number two, we have created an undersupply in India, undersupply of everything. If you see how our country is built, we believe people are not born, so we are short of hospitals. We believe people don't have to send their children to schools, so we are short of good quality schooling. We believe then after school people will not go to college, so we have a shortage of good quality colleges, and then shortage of jobs. You want to get married, our planners and leaders thought people will not get married, so we don't have banquet halls in our cities. Then people develop illegal banquet halls here and there. You keep shutting them down and locking them up. You try and get, if for parents getting a child married, they have to book a banquet hall 2 years ahead now, because this is the undersupply that our politicians, our leaders have created over time. In fact, it's a gory example to give on a Saturday morning, but I will tell you, I end up going to many funerals. On one of Delhi's 2 big cremation grounds, when you go there in a cremation ground about the size of this hall, I find about 20 pyres burning at the same time. It is terrible. The 20 families, guests, all messing around. Nobody knows whose pyre is burning where. Why? Because our leaders thought people will not die, so our cities don't even have places for the dead. We are short of graveyard space, we are short of crematorium space. Okay, Mr. Modi can go to UP and say कि शमशान के अगर कब्रिस्तान के लिए जगह मिले तो शमशान के लिए भी मिले. लेकिन सवाल ये है कि after 70 years after independence, why are we even short of space for the dead, for disposing of the dead? So problems of the youth are not confined to the problems of the youth. I think if you really want to address the problems of the youth, first abolish the Ministry of Youth Affairs. Because you think that youth affairs are different from affairs of other people. Youth affairs are the same as affairs for grown-up people, for children, for everybody. You have to address quality of life, because youth affairs ministries mean youth festivals, youth hostels, etc., etc., etc. Irregularities, it's a joke. So India's politics and governance has to be freed from this thinking. I know this is all in the name of Gandhi, but Gandhi would not have minded if we had debated his ideas. And frankly, if Gandhi was around, probably he would have found many of his own ideas outdated. You cannot go and live anymore in Anna Hazare's village. You are not Anna Hazare. You need to live in a place where you can get a metro to work, air-conditioned comfort, a computer, good bandwidth, cheap data. All these are now things that you need for your quality of life, and you should be able to choose whether you want to get married, not get married, your sexuality, whether you want to have children, not have children. The problem with our leaders is, I've watched it since I used to be young. Our leaders are always advising the youth what to do. And the reaction of the youth, we are too polite to say it openly, but the reaction of the youth basically is, go mind your own business. Because our leaders don't understand the young. So my request is, and we have 4 young leaders, we'll talk to them. My request to our leaders always is, stop bothering about how the young are thinking. Stop imagining that you can tell them what to do. I can't do it in my newsroom. And also, for heaven's sake, stop advising the youth. Because the last thing young people like is a sermon. हम होते थे तो ऐसा करते थे, तुम वो ऐसा करना चाहिए, गांधी जी होते थे तो ऐसा करते थे. So then people say, अब होते थे तो होते थे, हम भी 50 साल के बाद लोगों को यही बोलेंगे कि हम होते थे तो हम ऐसे करते थे. Because as my old friend Bob Blackwell, who was the ambassador of United States to America, used to say, no matter how bad the times, tomorrow they'll be our good old days. So this country's youth can no longer be governed by the good old days people. कि हम इतने अच्छे थे. Like my parents' generation would say, अंग्रेज इतने अच्छे थे. But they were the ones driving the British out. So everybody thinks nostalgia, but the youth lives in the future. Now I can't say that hand over power to 25-year-olds, because that is not about to happen. So the important thing is for the older politicians, the leaders, to let the young people be and to answer this problem of undersupply. Because once they answer this problem of undersupply of opportunity, then the same young people will compete. Some will become winners, some will become losers, but that is the way of life. So I think I'll conclude on that note and come back to my panel. You have Kavita, who all of you know very well, leader right from here. Second one leader right from here, notorious man, who my 2 friendly channels are always accusing of delivering hate speeches, but they keep on inviting him to speak every evening. Uske bina TRP nahi banta hai. Then we have Gaurav Gogoi from Assam, a very bright young MP, and again, because I have to display my age to you, I can tell you that I have known his father for more than 3 decades. As I knew our Chief Justice Gogoi's father, but not the same family. And then we have a new acquaintance here, Seema Malhotra. She's an MP from Labour Party in Britain. So all 4 of them, I will chat with them for a couple of minutes each, and then by that time, I think we'll be ready for questions. So, Seema Malhotra, since you are a guest, are you asked this question often in Britain, that what are you doing for the youth? I know you are much younger by the standards of Indian politics. In Indian politics, we've had 2 prime ministers recently, 3 prime ministers served till their 80s.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm very, very honored to be able to join you today. I hope this is now working. Well, I will just say that in the UK, we are catching up with you because our leader of the Labour Party is 67. So if he becomes Prime Minister, then we could well be seeing our Prime Ministers going into the 70s and 80s. But I do want to say that this is a very important question, and my congratulations as well to Kavita and to all of you for putting on this conference. Young people do ask me, what are you doing for young people? And the reason why I am driven by this question as well, and why I work so hard with our schools, is because we feel the same that you do, that young people are our future. The challenges in Britain are perhaps a bit different to here, in that we have a different problem with the age profile. So older people are living longer and there aren't enough younger people, so there are worries about the future and who's going to be doing the jobs. But we face a big challenge in making sure that we are dealing with the issues of employability so that young people really have access to jobs and have the skills to do them, with social mobility so that people aren't feeling like they're left behind. And we have a big debate in the UK about the left behind. Those who may be from towns, those where maybe industry isn't as much, and where their jobs are going to come from, and how we bridge what has been in Britain an establishment class divide as well. And also how we deal with well-being. Because for our young people in Britain, we have a big problem with well-being. The stresses of social media, of challenges from, in many ways, families that are having to work very hard, less time being spent with children. So mental health and young people is a big topic for our debate. And I want to just maybe close with this point, which is that if we want our young people to be growing up, being able to do the jobs and be the leaders of the future, well-being has to be very much part of the agenda for politicians and for governments. And we cannot have a situation, as we're starting to see in the UK and in many other developed countries, where well-being and mental health and even suicide rates of younger people who give up hope so much earlier are topics of national debate and are seen as increasing crises for our countries.
Well, that's true, because mental health is now an epidemic, particularly in poorer countries where it wasn't recognized earlier. And now as standards of living go up, people are seeing it, and there is really no infrastructure to deal with it. India is extremely short, for example, of mental health professionals at all levels. Do you have some of that in Britain also?
We do have this issue in Britain, and I will tell you one brief story of when I had children coming into Parliament. So we have schools that visit regularly, and the first question I was asked by a 15-year-old about 4 months ago wasn't, what do you do as a member of Parliament? It was, why is there such a waiting list for young people to have support for mental health issues? Because her friends had been waiting, and there's now lots of data how that is impacting young people's ability to learn in school and then do well in their exams. Then the impact of that carries on with them through the rest of their life. But I do believe that if we take this seriously as families and as community and as nation and as international community, then we can start to turn this around. And there is an issue, I think, within the Asian community, and we're facing this now in the UK, and it is now a debate I'm starting, that within the Asian community we don't talk about mental health issues, and we don't talk about that with confidence, and as a result people are suffering much more than they should be.
Asad bhai, so question I should ask you, what do MPs do in Parliament? And what do MPs do in Parliament especially that matters to young people?
Well, unfortunately, MPs don't do much in the Lok Sabha nowadays. Everything is done by the government. But you're right, this Lok Sabha is the oldest Lok Sabha. The average age in our country is 27 years, and the average age of MP in Lok Sabha is what, 55. So this has to be changed, and only 13% of our MPs are under the age of 40. Now, having said this, it is a huge responsibility on the members of Parliament, because if India's 50% of the population are under the age of 25, and 16% of educated youth are unemployed, the CMI says that we have highest unemployment of 7.38%. Market research companies have said that more than 7 lakh people have been laid off in IT sector. One third of non-workforce would be laid off by 2022. I feel this is a huge challenge for all the MPs, ruling party, whoever it is, to address this great issue. And if we don't rise up, because in Parliament, Parliament is what? Parliament makes policy. And if you don't have youth inside the Parliament, which will impact their lives, then I feel that the parliamentary democracy is not working properly. We are failing to strengthen our parliamentary democracy. As you rightly said in your opening remarks, in India, a politician never gets old. Even if he is 48 years or 49 years as I am, I'm still called a youth leader, despite having so many white hair in my beard. So this narrative has to change, and it is high time for political parties, MPs like me, to really give opportunity to the youth so that they get elected, come and address their issues, their problems.
Well, I do remember that in 1976, when I was a journalism student, Congress party during the emergency was having its big session near Chandigarh. I used to study in Chandigarh, and we were all herded in buses to go and watch the session. It was good free meal, a picnic at Bhakra Nangal. And so this was a youth Congress function that Sanjay Gandhi was addressing. And the gentleman standing next to him was Mr. Y.S. Parmar, the former Chief Minister of Himachal, who was about 78 years old then. So somebody said, what is he doing in a youth Congress rally? And Sanjay Gandhi said, there is youth of various kinds. Some people are young by age, some people are young in the mind, some people are young in the heart. So Dr. Parmar, having written his PhD thesis on polyandry, was particularly suited to be young in the heart. So Abhi, don't lose hope. Just because you have gray beard, it doesn't mean you are young anymore.
No. As you rightly said, as long as I'm alive, I'll continue to give hate speeches, and that makes me look younger. But you made a very important point in your speech. I was really shocked to read, but it is the reality of our country that the Secretariat in Maharashtra, for 13 posts of waiters, 7,000 people apply. And out of that, 12 are graduates. This in itself clearly shows that this is a huge challenge for us. And unless and until we address this issue of education, if you have a vice chancellor of a university saying that Ravana had 24 aircrafts, you know where our education is heading.
Well, that is less than the Rafales we are buying now, still. So Ravana did not have much of an air force. Kavita, if you could address a couple of these points, but also look at yet another point. You sit in the south. You also sit in a very rich city. Now, we were just looking at data. In fact, TN Nayanan has an article that we published today, where he says that a state like Madhya Pradesh has more population than Telangana and Andhra combined, but some 12 or 13% of their tax base. So there is a lot of regional imbalance in India. The flip side of it is that states in the south have been able to control their population growth. So you are not adding the numbers, whereas the Hindi heartland and states in the east, which are not growing, are adding the numbers. So there are lot more young people coming up there who don't have jobs. There are a lot more old people coming up in the south. So two things. One, national resources, if they are divided on the basis of numbers, then states that are not doing very well are getting more money. And second, 2026, when once again you look at the distribution of constituencies, and that is on the basis of population, then you could face a situation that south will lose the seats, and states which are not doing very well will add the seats, the political power balance will shift. Do you see a situation arising when young people of the north and the south are at odds with each other?
As of now, even in Parliament, we see this discussion often that South versus North bias is there, whereas South contributes more to the GDP of the nation and North takes a greater chunk because the population is more. But then I don't look at it that way. We are a nation as a whole, and I think the people sitting in the power at the center should look at the nation as a whole and look at the distribution system which can be just and fair to everybody. And yes, when it comes to political power and when it comes to distribution of member of parliaments and the seats, I think that time it should be thought in a different lines. But when it comes to feeding the poor, when it comes to addressing the unemployment issues, when it comes to addressing the education, health issues, I think it should be as a one nation philosophy. But then, you know, India is huge and each of our state is probably the size of Australia or even bigger. I think Telangana is pretty much about the population of Australia. So in that sense, in that terms, I think I was hearing your initial remarks and we should really focus inwards and work on developing the infrastructure. And as you rightly said, today we are the youngest nation. But I'll make an observation, Shekharji, and we should all really look forward to working on this. Today we are younger, but then within 30 years we'll be the oldest nation in the world. So right now, if we don't form a geriatric ministry and start working towards these policies, tomorrow we'll all be in huge, huge mess. As we see, you know, we can't address the youth problems now. 30 years later, we will not be able to address the senior citizens' problems. So policy making should be wholesome. Policy making should be futuristic. And when it comes to states, I believe I should like to think as an Indian first, feed the hungry people, then think about the states.
So, if I may paraphrase it, you're suggesting a pragmatic solution. You don't particularly mind the resources of the nation going more to states which have more numbers but are underdeveloped, but a political balance of power not to shift. That maybe parliament seats should be frozen as they are, and southern states should not be punished for controlling their population.
No, I totally disagree because performance should be taken into consideration. Because if you don't reward performance, whether in terms of reducing the population, whether in terms of GDP growth of a state, and the most important point of seats, parliamentary seats. Now, why do you want to punish me just because I have reduced the population? And if you are not successful in reducing the population, how long can this hegemony of an area in a country continue? Because it is, I think so, it is also very improper and it is injustice to the people of a state wherein you represent, an MP represents what, 24 lakh people, 2.4 million people. How is that possible? And I represent 1.5 million. Now this has to be addressed, and I am pretty much sure that at the time of distribution, when in 2026 a commission is going to form, this will be there will be huge outcry, public outcry would be there, and some sort of formula must be evolved wherein the performing states must be rewarded, and there must be an acceptable formula created, because this sort of imbalance cannot continue forever in our country.
I'll just make a quick point. Performing state, as in when the GST Council was also sitting in the country, we really fought it out from Telangana. We said we are developing at 20 to 23%, unlike any other state in the country. But then you are only trying to cap us at 14%. That is not correct. Yes, in terms of performance of a state, we should get better incentives. But अभी यूपी में है, मध्य प्रदेश में है, फिर भी वो तो हमारे भाई है, हिंदुस्तानी है. So you can't punish them just because they are more in number. You can't give them more hospitals. You'll have to invest more in them. But then yes, reward the performing states with better incentives, better industrial incentives, better policies from the central government is what I believe.
So to bring you back to my pet hobby horse, if you look at, please do read that article by T.N. Nayanan. It's on our website, theprint.in. It's not behind a paywall, so you can read it. It's a very short article. It tells you how, if you see carefully, the states that have poor social indicators and not improving fast enough, and larger populations, and a much smaller tax base, you will find an interesting factor there. These are because which is the state doing the worst of all on these parameters? It is Bihar. And what is common between these states? That those states have not focused on urbanization. They have not built cities, they have not built industrial areas, they have not created new jobs. So their people are now forming the bulk of these 2.5 crore applications for 66,000 railway jobs, or whatever number he said, 7,000 for 13 jobs? 7,000 for 13 waiters jobs. So these people are coming in from there. In fact, the fastest growing job opportunity in India right now is private security guards. So that is the state that we are in. Also, just to tell you a little tidbits, think all of India, in fact, India is now handling its population problem much better than was imagined. People had predicted much worse, but India's population growth rate is now down to 1.4% per year and declining. So soon, overall, India, much sooner than we had thought, India will be at replacement values as the states of the south are. But in the middle of this, while all of India is 1.4% growth, the state of UP is 2.8% growth, twice as much. And remember, there's another country in our neighborhood which also has exactly the same rate of population growth, 2.8%. And that country, the population exactly the same size as that of UP. So you can see that a state of 22 crores in India is now mimicking the population indicators of Pakistan. I say this with care, but this tells you that if you compare, say, UP with Andhra, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, so that is how imbalance is now coming up. And young people are noticing it on both sides because those are becoming labor exporting states, but they are not exporting the best quality labor for the best quality jobs in your states. And that is a big problem. But Gaurav, you come from one of the most distant states in the country, which has many good things happening, but some not many good things happening. How does all this sound to you? And do you see a special sense of alienation or euphoria among the youth in your state? Gaurav comes from Assam.
Well, first of all, thank you to Kavita for inviting me here. And I think this is a great blend of speakers and a great blend of participants. There are many issues that have been said by my previous speakers which have a resonance with the Northeast. But with the Northeast part of our country, one has to take into account the historical factors of insurgency, of law and order issues, of various political movements which were driven by ethnicity. And maybe that's something that people of Telangana will also resonate with and connect with. As a result of these political movements and the law and order situation that it created, in the Northeast we've lost close to 2 decades of economic growth. So when after Dr. Manmohan Singh's economic liberalization policies in 1991, when the rest of the country was growing gradually from 4% to 6% to 9%, the Northeast was stuck at anywhere between 2 to 3%. So we've lost 2 decades and we've come out of step and out of sync with the rest of India. Nonetheless, the positive story is that the last decade has built foundations for development, has built foundations for economic growth. And I think in the Northeast, what we understand is that we do not have enough jobs to employ the people of our region. So therefore, what we focus on, and many governments in the Northeast of India are focusing on, are also livelihoods. So you do have the formal sector jobs, which are the jobs in the government, the jobs in the private sector. But because there are not enough private sector investment in the Northeast, we're also looking at livelihoods. Now, what does livelihoods mean? It could mean anything, a rural-based livelihood, which could vary anything from a hair salon to diversifying your farmers, to diversifying your farming produce, to urban livelihoods, which could be either getting into services, opening your own gym, or opening your own hotels. So we're trying to focus a lot more on services to create employment, and realizing that there are not enough formal sector jobs. So livelihoods has to be a critical part of your employment strategy. So you see Sikkim having this, grow organic mission. And that is not only from the point of view from growing organic or from a healthy nutrition point of view, it has a strong employment correlation to it. But one thing I must share, one thing that I see in the Northeast, which I perhaps don't see in other parts of the country, is that the participation of young people in politics. If you remember the history of Assam, you see that we have Prafulla Mohanta, who came from student politics. One of the biggest accords of Assam, the Assam Accord, which was signed by the government of India, was signed with a students' association. So the role of students right from high school and college in politics, in understanding the needs of their region, in understanding the political aspirations of the ethnic communities that they belong to, I think that's a very healthy thing. And I think one that should be encouraged. We want to encourage young people to mobilize themselves, to organize themselves around political causes, and one should encourage that. Even if you're in government, one should encourage that. Unfortunately, in today's India, the space for debate and democracy is shrinking. Anytime a young person voices an opinion which is antagonistic to this government, they are filed with sedition cases. Now, that's not how you're going to encourage young people to enter into politics if you're going to file sedition cases. Anytime there's a university which has an independent thought, and a thought which is of constructive criticism, that the whole weight of the central government, the ministry, the Union Ministry of Education comes down on that university, whether that's in Delhi or whether that's in Hyderabad. And I think that's very unfair. The government has nothing to be afraid of students. The government needs to encourage students to be more, to imbibe the values of democracy and parliamentary debate.
So let me ask my trick question to the three of you. You have immunity from this. Are we wrong to say that Indian politicians, old politicians, have not done enough for the youth? In fact, they've done enough for the youth as long as the youth happens to be from their families. So three of you come from distinguished families. Now, this is an important question about politics. In so many decades of watching politics now in India from very close, and having known almost everybody who's anybody in politics, I found only one case of a young person crashing through these entry barriers and reaching the top someplace, and that is Arvind Kejriwal. Besides that, every young person, and I'm no fan of his, he and I spar quite a lot, but just because somebody is young, I don't stop arguing with them, right? But the fact is that it is impossible, entry barriers are such that it's impossible for a young person to break through in politics anywhere except if he or she comes from a distinguished family. And that is not truer of any party more than yours. Because, if you count the top 30, top 50 of your party, from any calculation, I will show you that you beat all the others on this parameter. So you first and then the other two.
Well, Shekhar, I'd like to make a slight distinguishing factor. I think it's very hard for young people to get into Indian political parties, but it's not impossible, but young people are getting into politics. And I think in the Congress party, what we've realized that young people are interested and are passionate about political causes. They might not join the Congress party, but we might find a common cause around which we unite and we come together. So if you look at Gujarat as an example, you had Hardik come in, you had Jignesh come in. Not all of them joined. Alpesh joined the Congress party, but not all of them did. But yet we came around. And I think that's one of the points that we completely understand in the Congress party, that they are, with Indian political parties, because you, as one member of parliament, you have to represent 22 lakh, 24 lakh, coming from a political family does give you an asset, but that doesn't mean that only by inducting young people into my party am I going to engage with them. I can engage with them around causes, around issues, and then I think that's what is going to be the way forward, whether it's someone that we come around with a Kanhaiya or a Shela Rashid or a Jignesh, we might differ on some issues and we might come together on some issues. Nonetheless, I have found in our experience in the recent elections that have taken place over the last 2 years, within our party, and I must be honest about this, we've consciously, while screening candidates and while giving, tickets to candidates, we've looked for younger representatives of a party to go ahead and contest in their respective constituencies, whether that's been in Karnataka, whether that's been in Gujarat. And it's right now, I must say, you understand Indian politics, you understand how people vote for a phase, for an idea. It's very difficult for a young person to win an election. More often than not, the senior person from that area, if he doesn't get that ticket, he stands as an independent and really ruins the chances. So we must also, in political parties, understand that it's not just about giving tickets. We have to create this space for them to be able to, grow the political career in a safe space without being threatened by or attacked by elders within the party. So